I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and next to me is the refreshed BMW X6 LCI. This is BMW's full-size coupe SUV, the competitor to the Audi Q8 and the Mercedes GLE Coupe. Less popular overall than the wagon-bodied X5, the X6 has still gained something of a cult following among BMW people, both here in Europe, back in Australia, and around the world. In fact, the X6 was, to many, the original coupe SUV. So, what's it like today, and should BMW bother continuing to produce this model alongside the X5 and the likes of the XM in the future? Look, I've always been quite cynical about coupe SUVs, so what better way to work out whether a vehicle like this has a future than to drive one for about 5,000 kilometers, starting right here in snowy Kitzbühel, in Austria, in the Alps. If you've been a subscriber for a long time to the channel, you'll know that I do my yearly road trip over here in Europe. I normally go for a wagon of some sort, but this time, for whatever reason, we've decided to bring virtually all of our earthly possessions, which meant a bigger vehicle was needed. Sitting pretty in the snow behind me is an X6 in loaded 30D M Sport form. We've got almost all the toys on this particular car, and I'm looking forward to seeing whether I'm in fact wrong. Coupe SUVs do have a reason for existing, but before we do that, let's check out the X6 on the inside. Let's see how much stuff we can get into this vehicle. But before proceedings commence, hit subscribe down below. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. Before I tell you how the X6 drives or how it has driven on this mega journey, let's take a look at the interior, because the particular car that I've landed with here in Europe is specified the way that you could specify one in Australia, with one big exception, and that is the wheels outside. You used to be able to get the 20-inch wheel design featured on this vehicle in Australia, but the configurator is no longer allowing it to be chosen, so minimum wheel size back home now appears to be 21 inches, which isn't too bad. Now, the specification of this car is pretty high in terms of an X6 xDrive30d. What you're looking at here in the interior is a mix of the Australian comfort and executive packages. What we have here is a new type of seat upholstery that the X6 and X5 received in the recent past, and this is called Verino. It very much looks and feels like real quilted perforated leather, but in fact it is not leather at all. Comfortable, soft, heated and cooled in this specification, and the seats have massive amounts of adjustment, far beyond the usual 12 ways that you'd normally expect. We also have inflatable side bolsters, we have a headrest that can move up and down electrically and even has wings in it to make it extra comfortable, plus the upper part of the backrest can actually be adjusted separately to the lower part. Point being, for long road trips like the one we've been doing, you can actually get into a super comfortable driving position in this vehicle. Still a round steering wheel in the X6, and it's heated if you go for the comfort package as well. Plus, we've got a leather upper dash, nicely stitched, and just hugely quality interior fitments. The build quality of this American-made X6 is absolutely superb, with no creaks, no rattles, nothing moving whatsoever, which is something that sets this car apart from its main rivals, the Mercedes GLE and also the Audi Q8, both of which can be a bit creaky, a bit rattly. Love the fact that even though we now have the new latest iDrive in the X6, we still have the rotary controller down here, which feels great. Key shortcut buttons are still accessible, although the climate's now in the screen, but it does sit on this bar here for the most part, and we haven't really found it that annoying. Big panoramic sunroof here to let in the winter sun, and storage is good. Big bin here between the seats with USB-C, two decent sized heated and cooled cup holders that really work, plus the door bins, which are soft lined on the outside, really lovely materials. They're big enough to take a large water bottle, which is another thing you need while driving big distances. All of this is to say the cabin of the X6 is really well executed up front. Let's check out the back. The main complaint about coupe SUVs like the X6 is normally that their sloping rooflines impedes passenger and cargo space, and we will check out the impact on the boot in just a minute. But as a 6 foot, 183 centimeter adult in the back, you can see I've got no issue in the X6. Now that's partially because the car this is based on, the X5, actually has a comically high window line. I always think you could wear a top hat in an X5. that has been cut back in the X6, but because it started from such a tall bar, even the coupe SUV, so there's good headroom for 6-footers, good legroom behind my own driving position, toe room's generous as well, and the seat bench is inclined up enough. So not only do we have air vents in the back, as you'd expect, we can even slightly change the temperature in a manual way there, but we have heated rear seats too. We can deploy an armrest here, which has 2 cup holders and some extra, albeit unlined, weirdly, storage space there. That's quite nice. Over here on the doors, manual sun blinds. They work extremely well to limit the light here in the back. The leather lining continues to the rear doors, which is lovely. You might be wondering what this doohickey is. You can slide that across and BMW will sell you things like phone or tablet holders that can slot right in here. And then you've got a USB-C port to power it as well. Plus we've got these big literature pockets here. So you can have your regionally appropriate literature in the back. Very good. Big door bins as well back here. So all in all, no major complaints, but if your kids are really tall, you will prefer the upright X5 or X7. Moving around to the polarizing bit of the BMW X6, the rear end is kind of designed to mix the tailgate of an X5 with the shape of the BMW 8 Series Coupe, which is the company's big 2-door car, and you can see that in the shape of the lights, which are very similar to an 8 Series or a 4 Series Coupe. This is where you're differentiated from the X5s on the road. Now you can see this one's an X6 xDrive30d, as I pointed out, and we also have what I call the tiny tow bar. But the cool trick with this tow bar is actually that it can go away beneath the car and be deployed electrically from within the boot, which is a nice feature to have and something you see quite commonly over here in Europe. Powered tailgate gets out of the way and reveals 580 litres of space, which isn't too bad for the class, but it is down about 13% on a comparable X5, which has 650 litres of space with all the seats up. Few nice features though. You can get a whole holiday's worth of stuff here, at least for 2 or 3 people. We've been able to get 4 suitcases in the back, no issue. Plus you got a neat little cargo blind that can deploy over your stuff. So when the car is parked, you can throw all of your mess from the car in here and no one can see it, which is handy, certainly if you're parking in sketchier locations. We've got some netting on the left and right as well. You can also set your tailgate height. So I've got a little bit lower because a lot of the car parks here are low, but you can actually move it higher if you want to. And we've got buttons here to close that tailgate or close it and lock up the vehicle. But before we do that, I'm going to let you know how I've fared in terms of my fuel consumption. As you see us now in these vines in beautiful Burgundy, I've put about 3,500 kilometers on the car. So some strong data points in terms of how much fuel you can expect to use. Now, a lot of people will like the fact that BMW will still sell you a diesel SUV. If you want a Mercedes GLE Coupe, you have to take petrol. Audi Q8 also does still have diesel availability. But here in the X630D, we've got BMW's really good B57 3-litre engine. It's nice and economical, despite this car being pretty large and pretty heavy and also pretty quick. Published figures are 8 litres per 100 kilometres in Australia, and I've gotten 8.6 litres per 100 kilometres so far. Keeping in mind that has involved some snow driving, some town driving, some nice efficient country driving, but also extended periods travelling quite quickly on the Autobahn at about 180 kilometres per hour. So 8.6 is not bad, and that's given me a real range of around 940 kilometres from the 80-litre diesel tank in this vehicle. Driven more moderately, such as on Australian highways, you should easily be able to eclipse 1,000 kilometres to a tank, which is really nice. As you see there, there's also an AdBlue tank on this vehicle too. In terms of servicing, BMW will sell you either a basic or an extended servicing plan covering 5 years and 80,000 kilometres of driving. Warranty on the vehicle back in Australia, 5 years, unlimited kilometres. So let's take the BMW X6 for a drive and I'll let you know what it's been like dynamically in the different environments in which we've tested it over the last few weeks and several thousand kilometers. And there's been a lot of variation, some of which you've seen in today's video. We've had some snow, we've had some beautiful country road driving, we've been in a bunch of bustling European cities doing the daily grind, and then heaps of highway driving, mostly in Germany, so we can keep the speeds a bit higher and the cost of fuel a bit lower, or the higher speed kind of cancels that out, doesn't it? But all of that's to say is that I feel like I've really gotten to know the X6 well, and that's good because even though I've been reviewing cars for a decade, haven't actually driven that many X6s. The last one I drove unfortunately sustained a tire puncture pretty early in the testing period, so finally had some really good seat time in this generation of X6, just in time for it to almost be retired, because this is one of the oldest vehicles in BMW's current lineup. But in a testament to just how good the cluster architecture platform is and how good BMW's current generation of cars are, this vehicle doesn't feel old at all. In fact, in many ways, it feels fresher and newer than all of its key rivals. And in general, this is just another good BMW to drive. Good to very good, I would say. It's a little bit specification dependent, however, like a lot of current BMWs. So what are we dealing with in our test car? Well, this is the entry-level spec and engine that you can get in Australia. While this particular one has a pretty opulent interior fit-out, mechanically this is what you get when you pay the least for an X6 back home. So that is a 3-litre inline 6-cylinder single-turbo diesel engine badged the xDrive30d, producing 210 kilowatts of power and 650 newton meters of torque. This is the B57 engine, and BMW hasn't left it alone over the last few years. Recently, they've added a 48-volt mild hybrid system to the 30D and many other engines that BMW currently produces. Nominally, the mild hybrid adds another 9 kilowatts of power and 200 newton meters of torque, although you're not getting the full effect of that all the time. You occasionally coast with the engine off now, and one pronounced effect of the mild hybrid system is there's actually surprisingly aggressive regenerative braking in this car, which is not normally something you think of in an internal combustion vehicle or even a mild hybrid, but the system is adaptive. It's looking at the traffic in front of you, and as you approach a slower vehicle or as you enter a slower speed zone as detected by the sensors on the car, the regen braking comes in pretty aggressively and slows you down. Now initially that annoyed me because in my view it kind of took away from the buttery smoothness of the powertrain to have this new complexity coming in on top, but I've gotten used to it, and it's nice because you can use the brake pedal less. That being said, the brake pedal is good and positive and firm in this car, and the brakes work well, particularly considering it is pretty heavy, about 2,200 kilograms before you start to put all of our stuff into the car. Now, one other thing the mild hybrid has done to the system is to slightly reduce the smoothness of the pairing between the B57 diesel and the 8-speed ZF automatic transmission in this car. Once one of the absolute best and great pairings of engine and transmission, it's now just slightly less smooth as the hybrid appears to sort of figure out what it wants to do to contribute to the system. Occasionally gear changes are a little bit less crisp than what they used to be. But what about the chassis of the vehicle? Well, that's where it does become a bit specification dependent. As I start to drive through a smaller town here, which has a few bumps and potholes and imperfections in the Australian style, that really sort of brings this issue to the fore. Now, our car is wearing European market 20-inch wheels wrapped in winter tires, and you used to be able to get the same 20s in Australia, but apparently not anymore, as the configurator doesn't appear to allow you to choose them, which means that back home, 21s are now the smallest wheel option. But what they do mean is that the ride is even firmer than our car here. So we don't have the optional air suspension on this tester. We just have the standard adaptive damper package, and the body controls are very good, particularly for such a large, heavy car. But the ride is pretty firm, and here in Europe, where most of the road surfaces are excellent, it still feels a little bit firm. So in Australia, where the road surfaces are not excellent on average, you're going to be thinking, gee, for this much money, I wish the car rode a bit better. Thankfully, you can fix the problem because BMW will sell you a pretty attractively priced air suspension option, $2,500, which is very fair, and it does even out the ride nicely, at least on the X5s I've tested on 21-inch wheels, and I've got no reason to think it'd be any different in the X6. Steering is sort of that BMW steering we were talking about 5, 6, 7 years ago, which is very accurate and the front end goes where you point it, but there's not a huge amount of feel coming through the tiller. And this is something that BMW started to fix on newer vehicles like the G23 series platform. This car is still kind of left in the cold a little bit in terms of steering feel, but this is not something that most people will tend to complain about. Grip is okay, but of course we are on Euro spec winter tires here, which changes a lot of the parameters of grip. These are the Michelin Pilot Alpine Sport, very good in the snow as we found out at the start of this video, but at Autobahn speeds you're getting a little bit of lateral shift, not really a relevant problem for Australia, and in any case in our local market the X6 runs on summer tires all year round, so no issue. Refinement, however, is good. Just a little bit of diesel churn in the background. Some people will like that, adds a bit of character to the car, but not much wind noise, not much road noise, so you can enjoy the crisp Harman Kardon stereo or the Bowers & Wilkins Diamond if you've optioned that one, and just enjoy the serenity of what is a nice, big, comfortable cruiser. The safety features as well, quick shout out to those. Among the best tuned out there, the BMW assisted driving function has basically strong lane keep assist, strong adaptive cruise. As long as you keep your hands on this steering wheel with sensors in it, it's happy to basically just drive itself down the highway, really reduce fatigue on those longer drives. It's very accurate, I found, and it will even change lanes for you over here if you just tap the indicator to tell it which way you want to go. So all in all, I've enjoyed driving this car. So finishing this video in rather different surrounds to the ones that we started, and having covered a lot of terrain in the BMW X6, let me answer the questions that I posed to you at the start of this video. Firstly, does this sort of vehicle still deserve to exist? By which I mean a big, luxurious diesel coupe SUV. Well, that answer has a couple of parts. Diesel clearly is still the right fit for some buyers, and demonizing diesel isn't going to work in terms of convincing people that perhaps petrol or hybrid or electric is ready and suitable for everybody at this point, even though hybrids and EVs are improving at a rapid clip. This vehicle behind me can sit on the Autobahn all day over here in Europe, and it can return a real range of nearly 1,000 kilometers. No EV on sale today can achieve that. So if that's your life, if doing massive miles in comfort is what you want and what you need to do, then a big diesel SUV or a big diesel station wagon perhaps is still a great way to travel. What about on the coupe SUV front? Well, compared to a BMW X5, this vehicle is $6,000 more expensive, and it's less practical in terms of the amount of cargo that it can carry. However, it isn't as compromised as you might expect. Visibility isn't too bad, and the price premium, frankly, could actually be worse. That being said, for me, I'm a practical guy, and I also prefer the upright shape of the X5. So if it was my cash, I would save some money and I'd just opt for an X5. So all in all, I've very much enjoyed my time driving the BMW X6. This is a refined, relatively efficient, comfortable, luxurious cruiser. Not a cheap vehicle, but when you're buying something as big and luxurious as this, you want it to feel like the full package. And frankly, that's what the X6 is. At least it has been on this trip. Very keen to know your views, so let me know down below this video in the comments. While you're there, hit subscribe and the notification bell. And as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.